Hi, my name is Mary Maston, MSK Advocate and USF Tampa Project Facilitator. Hopefully you've had a chance to watch my first video where I read my online petition and I posted the link there as well so that you could sign it and forward it to everyone. Uh, it has gotten a huge response, and I want to thank everyone that has signed it and passed it on. And because of that, and also another video that a friend of mine, Kayla, did, she's also a MSK sufferer. I believe that we're starting to get the word out about this disease, and more people are coming to our Facebook group, which is a wonderful thing. We've probably added anywhere from 8 to 10 members just in the last week or so, and that is phenomenal. It means people are going to start getting the help that they need, and they're going to start having access to the resources that they didn't have before. So this has been a huge deal, and that is why I decided to do a series of these videos, uh, just to talk about all aspects of MSK. I'll be talking about some general things, but later as I go along, I'll also be getting into more of the scientific aspects of MSK and the medical parts of it. So if you like, feel free to subscribe to my page and or my channel rather, and leave a comment. Um, I appreciate any feedback that you might have, and I'm excited to keep this rolling. So what I'm going to do now is just give you some information on my background and what I've gone through in dealing with MSK. Uh, just a little geographic information. I was born in Ohio. Uh, Obviously, my accent is not a northern accent. I was actually raised in the South. Louisiana mostly is where I spent my early years. Mississippi. Um, the majority of my life, I lived in Tennessee. Go Vols! So I'm a diehard Tennessee fan, whether they win or lose. So that's just the way it is. My blood runs orange. But let's see. My first kidney stone I had at the age of 13, way back in 1987. And what happened with that was up until that point, had been a normal, healthy, active child. I did everything that kids do. But I started feeling really bad, and I started gaining a lot of weight, and I was really tired all the time. And at this time, I was in the 7th grade, and of course, that's a hard time for kids anyway, being in middle school. And especially with all of the weight that I put on in such a short amount of time, I was the victim of constant teasing. And this wasn't just a little bit of weight. I mean, I put on probably 40 to 50 pounds in a matter of 8 months or so. And couldn't figure out what was going on. I didn't feel good, and finally, after I broke down and just cried and cried to my mom because I was in such horrendous pain, she made an appointment with our family doctor. So I went in, and of course they did all the normal standard things, did a urine sample, and said that I had a urinary tract infection. So he put me on antibiotics for a week with a follow-up to come back in a week. I took all of the antibiotics and still wasn't feeling well. So I went back, and I believe I tested positive again for an infection, if I remember correctly. That was several years ago. Um, and I may have even done a second round of antibiotics. And went back again, and at that second appointment he had told my mom that he thought that I was just faking these symptoms and the pain to try to get out of going to school, especially since I was being teased all the time because of the weight thing. And I can remember laying in my bed just crying my eyes out, swearing to my mom that I wasn't lying about this. Something was very wrong. And so at that third appointment, she asked him, well, pretty much demanded that he give us a referral to a urologist. So he did, and I went, and they did an x-ray, and come to find out, I had a kidney stone the size of a quarter in my right kidney. So back in those days, he scheduled me for a lithotripsy and said that I was the youngest patient that he had ever had, number one, and number two, that he would ever perform lithotripsy on. That was, we were in Tennessee, and it was a fairly new procedure at that time. So what they did for that was they get you ready for the surgery. They do an epidural, which was horrendous, and they basically dress you up like a baked potato. They put all of this aluminum stuff on you, like an aluminum blanket and little hair cover type deal. And when they wheeled me out to go to the operating room, my mom said all she could see was just from my head up, and the rest of me was covered in aluminum foil. So the way they did that surgery back then was they load you into this big harness looking thing. And of course, I was numb from the waist down, so I couldn't move my legs, I couldn't help them. And so they're all lifting me up and trying to get me into this harness thing, and they strap me in, and then they load you into a big tub of water. And I can remember thinking I'm sitting in this harness and I'm loaded into this water, and I'm into water up to my neck, and I was woozy anyway because of all of the medication that they gave me. And I kept thinking, I'm gonna drown, I'm gonna drown. And I think I even said something because they got kind of tickled at me. But I didn't drown, obviously. Everything went okay. But I did notice they ended up blasting that stone. It was, good grief, seems like he said 3,000 or 4,000 times they blasted it. And back at that time, they admitted you into the hospital at least for 24 hours, for observation. And they gave me, of course, a funnel to catch the fragments so that they could send them off and have them analyzed. Well, after that was done, I was pretty much pain-free, after I passed all of the stone and everything, and I was back to being my normal self. I didn't have another problem until 2005. By that time, I had already been married once and divorced. I was a military wife. My ex-husband was in the Navy. We were stationed in Virginia. I had a son, and actually I had a daughter too from that first marriage. Was working, living my life, doing my thing, but throughout all of this, I would have urinary tract infections and bladder infections and kidney infections. It seemed like every couple of months or so, at least every 6 months, I would go to the doctor because I would have symptoms. I would have blood in my urine. I went to the ER a couple times because I had blood in my urine and my back felt horrible. Um, I was actually diagnosed with a kidney infection when I found out I was pregnant with my second daughter, or my first daughter, rather. So they plagued me throughout all that time, and it got to the point to where I wouldn't go to the doctor because every time I went, it was like, oh, you have an infection. So, of course, ignoring it doesn't make it go away, but in my case, I ignored it as long as I could because I have a life to live. So, anyway, this is my third child now that I'm pregnant with in 2005. And one day I'm just feeling horrible. I was probably about 2 months along, and I couldn't keep anything down. If I ate, it came right back up. If I drank water or anything, it came right back up. I spent that whole day in bed, and I finally called my husband. This is my second husband. And I told him, I said, I need to go to the emergency room. Something's not right. And so he took me to the emergency room, and of course, here I was pregnant again, so they couldn't do an x-ray. They had to do a ultrasound. And come to find out, I had a kidney stone. Um, Actually, I think I had two. I think I had one in both kidney, but I can't remember the sizes. So I went through that whole pregnancy with that kidney stone. Now thinking back, I think it was 5 millimeters. The big one was. And during my pregnancy, I also developed gestational diabetes, which I had never done before. So that was kind of a shock to me, and it really freaked me out because I was scared to death of having to do insulin injections. So they told me, said, well, if you can get your diet under control, which I don't. I eat pretty healthy anyway. I always have. Here's what you need to avoid, and if you can get your sugar regulated, then you won't have to do injections. But if you don't, with it being as high as it is, you're going to have to do injections. And it got to the point, even though I was watching what I ate, they made me take a class on how to do injections, because my sugar was pretty high. But luckily, I was able to get it under control and didn't have to do that. So I delivered my daughter in March of 2006, and everything was once again okay. I would still have the occasional urinary tract infection and, bladder infection, kidney infection, but for the most part, I was back to normal. And then in 2008, I started having some pretty excruciating pain. It was so bad I didn't sleep for 3 days, even though I was still going to work. I went to a walk-in clinic and they did an x-ray and told me that I had probably just pulled a muscle. If the pain didn't stop, with ice and Tylenol, to go see my family doctor. So by the next day I was feeling even worse, and so I made an appointment with my family doctor, went in, and by this time I was in tears. I couldn't function. I could barely walk. Everybody at work was asking me what happened, what's wrong with you, and I'm like, well, I don't know. I've either pulled a muscle or hurt my back or something, or cracked a rib. I don't know, but it hurts. And so my family doctor did an x-ray. Well, we don't see any kidney stones. You've probably just pulled a muscle. Gave me a shot of Toradol and a shot of steroids and sent me on my way. On my lunch break that day, because I went back to work, I called my urologist and asked them to get me in because I'd had blood in my urine this whole time too. So they got me in, and I had kidney stones in both kidneys. So they scheduled me for a lithotripsy. This is in March of 2008. I do the lithotripsy on a Friday. I have a stent put in. That Friday night, I go back to the emergency room because I'm in excruciating pain. I can't walk. I'm bawling my eyes out. I mean, it was just horrible. So they got my pain under control and wanted to admit me, to figure out what was going on because they said the stent shouldn't be causing pain like that. And I didn't want to be admitted to the hospital, so I went home. I had my follow-up visit with my urologist that following Wednesday, and the stones were still there. So he scheduled me for a second lithotripsy that Friday. He did the lithotripsy. Actually, it wasn't him, it was one of the other doctors in his group did the lithotripsy. And of course, stent's still there. I go back the following Wednesday again for the follow-up, and they do the x-ray, and the stone is still there. The doctor is just mystified. They showed me they always show me my x-rays. And he's looking at it, and I'm looking at it, and he's scratching his head, and he's like, I blasted the crap out of that stone. How can it still be there? And I said, well, are you sure you've got the right x-ray? Are you sure that's not a previous x-ray? So we checked the date on it and everything. He said, you're going to have another surgery. We're going to schedule you for it this Friday. So for the third Friday in a row, I had lithotripsy. And I was still working in between this time, in between the surgeries. I would take like one day off and then go back to work. And after that third lithotripsy, I was still working, but I was in so much pain. Of course, they had me on pain medication, but it really wasn't doing a whole lot of anything. I was miserable. So I went for my follow-up that next Wednesday from the third lithotripsy and saw my doctor this time. And they did another x-ray, and the stone was still there. Well, they did a CT too, and come to find out that I had massive internal bleeding on my left kidney. And it was because of having the lithotripsies done so close together. My kidney was over 90% blocked on the CT. You couldn't even see it because of all of the blood. So this time they admitted me to the hospital on a Friday. And he consulted with another doctor who did a surgery to insert a catheter through my back into my kidney to drain all the blood off because they couldn't do anything with it until the blood was gone. And that was excruciatingly painful. After a couple days after the blood, finally drained off of my kidney, he went in and did the laser surgery. And when he came out and talked to my husband after the surgery, he told me, well, we got those stones, but there's a really big one that's too high up in her left kidney to be able to do anything about. And her kidney has thousands of stones and crystals in it. And he told me point blank after I recovered, he said, you have medullary sponge kidney. And he said, you are going to have kidney stones for the rest of your life. He said it's going to take you years to recover from all of these surgeries that we just did. And, that's basically all he told me. He didn't have a whole lot of information about it. He just told me what it is, that I'm gonna, have all these kidney stones and all these crystals and everything in my kidneys for the rest of my life. He basically told me to avoid tea, avoid chocolate, and avoid nuts. which I love all of those dearly. So I'm still struggle with that a little bit, but I'm working on it. So that's what my journey has been so far. Since those episodes, I've been in constant severe pain. Some days I can function with it even though it's still there. Other days I spend in my bed on my heating pad all day, every day. There are literally more bad days than there are good. So, what I do now, what we ended up moving from Tennessee to Florida in March 2011. And in April, I ended up passing 4 small stones, which I don't normally pass kidney stones. I've had a couple here and there, but there are people that pass them every single day, but I'm not one of those people. My stones are always way too big to pass, and they always require more than one surgery because they're so hard. So in April, I passed those kidney stones. In May, I started a new job. And then in June, I ended up in the emergency room. I knew I still had the leftover kidney stone from 2008 in my left kidney, but I was hurting on my right side, so I went to the emergency room. Well, yeah, you have a 9 millimeter stone in your left kidney that's not going anywhere, and you have a 4 millimeter stone in your right kidney that's not going anywhere. So they referred me to a urologist. I went and saw the urologist, had a lithotripsy done, which didn't work. Well, first I had the surgery to put the stents in, and I always say that stents are nothing more than modern day torture devices. They're horrible. I hate them. Some people don't have problems with them, but a lot of people do. And honestly, it would be nice if I could go and cram some stents into some of the doctors that I've had previously and tell them to just deal with it. They're horrible. I hate them. But first he did the surgery for the stent. That was in June of 2011. 2 weeks later, he did the first lithotripsy, which broke up the 4 millimeter stone on the right, but didn't do anything for the 9 millimeter stone on the left. So 2 weeks later, he did another lithotripsy. And all this time, I didn't pass any sand or gravel or anything. I didn't pass anything, but I had tons of blood. I'm surprised I have any blood left with as much blood as I lost during this. So I had the second lithotripsy and still had the stents, and he called me in to do my follow-up visit, and I had gone for an x-ray before the visit and a CT scan, and he told me, he said, I had to personally call the radiologist to confirm that I was actually seeing what I thought I saw on your x-ray. He said, I don't believe it. He said, but that stone is still there. And I said, what stone? The big stone? And he said, yeah. He said, it's still there. He said, I'm going to have to go in with the laser and get it. So that's what he did 2 weeks later. And during this time, I still had the stents. I ended up with the stents for almost 7 months. And I hate them. Like I said, if I can get out of having stents, I'll never do that again. But here it is, May 2012, and I'm still trying to recover from that. Not only did I have 4 surgeries, but I had 6 ER visits 6 or 7 ER visits from June until February, maybe March of this year. And I've also had 6 urinary tract infections in this time. I'm actually on antibiotics right now for a urinary tract infection. So, as you can tell, this disease is quite infuriating. It's a never-ending battle. There's always something going on. Um, Doctors sometimes just look at you and don't know what to do for you. The antibiotics aren't working. This is one of the major reasons why we need new research. The surgeries, back-to-back surgeries, do extensive damage to the kidneys. Um, and it's going to get to a point with these surgeries to where the kidneys aren't going to be able to recover. They're just going to be too damaged, especially doing them so close together. It's we as patients are at a loss. I mean, our doctors are at a loss, and that's, who we go to. That's who we're expecting to fix us and make us better and help us. And they don't know, and they don't want to listen to what we have to say because they think they know more than we do, which they may on some aspects, but they don't have to live with this disease every single day for the rest of their lives. They don't have to experience the pain and the multiple stones and the stents and the blood and, the vomiting all the time. I think the most horrifying part of this for me is that I've had to quit my job, and now I'm in the process of filing for disability because I cannot physically work anymore. If I do any sort of physical activity at all, I'm urinating blood for several days afterwards. I can't sit in a hot tub with the jets on my back, or I'm urinating blood and in excruciating pain for several days afterwards. For some people, you can get out and jog down the block or, move a box from here to there. I can't do any of that anymore. And, as a friend of mine stated, I've told several people, I'm a self-proclaimed pissed off redneck, is what I am. People should not be made to suffer the way that MSKers are suffering. And there's got to be something done. I think one of the most heartbreaking things for me is when my 6-year-old says, "Mommy, do you remember when you used to be able to run and play with me? I wish you could still do that." And I tell her, "Oh, I do too, baby." I can't get out in the yard and play ball with her. I can't, do any of the things that a mother should be able to do with their child because of this stupid disease. So we need help, we need research, and that's a little bit about me. I'm going to do another video here shortly, getting into a little bit more of other patients and what they've been told and what they're dealing with, just to drive the point home that, I'm not by myself in this, and that helps tremendously. And for anyone that's watching this, you need to know you are not alone in this. Look up our Facebook group. It is a fabulous group of people that have come together. It's a closed group, so you don't have to worry about what you post being posted on your regular Facebook group. You can ask questions, you can vent. I mean, we laugh, we cry, we have a good time. we share ideas and we share research, and it's just a wonderful place to be. It's really become my second family, and I can't thank Kayla enough for starting that. It's an invaluable tool. So look us up on Facebook. Make sure to pass the petition around. Facebook, Twitter, MySpace, any media outlet you can forward it to would be greatly appreciated. And I hope that you'll stay tuned for my next series of videos. Um, I look forward to discussing this with you and hopefully helping some of you out there find some answers. I appreciate your time and have a good night.